Welcome to the Practice Squad, a show where we make the replacement refs look like pros. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co-host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
Good. Glad our audio is working better now.
Me too. We're live right here on YouTube each and every week at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, right after Monday Night Football. If you're tired of the punditry or just want a fresh voice, come listen to a couple random dudes talk about football and have a good time. This week, we're going to recap the games from week 1, discuss our top 10 current NFL players, give predictions for the upcoming week's games, and a whole lot more. So we got a lot to cover, man, so let's dive right into our recap for week 1. A lot of crazy stuff happened this week. We got all kinds of upsets, teams that I thought were going to play terribly this season, played well. Case in point, Tampa Bay. What the heck was that?
Hey man, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe he did. Maybe he does deserve $20 million a year like he wanted a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, let's do an MVP segment right now. Let's throw his name in the bucket. No, so I mean, I don't know what to think about Tampa Bay. I think the biggest takeaway is that the Saints defense is still bad, as it's been bad for the last 4 or 5 or more years, and Breeze is going to have to score 35 points a game if they want to win games, unfortunately.
Which is a bummer because, last year the Saints defense, wasn't half bad, and we thought maybe that was the turnarounds. Because Drew Brees had an incredible game yesterday. Like, I think he was 37 of 45, which is like 82%. I looked it up. And over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Great game, but obviously he's not out there on defense giving up 48 points.
Right. Yeah, I just don't. That game was not. I didn't watch much of it, but I did see the stat line, and he was basically perfect. He was 37 for 45, had, I think it was 400 something yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, you just can't ask for more from him than they get, and yet they still lose. They find ways to lose. So tonight, there were 2 games tonight. One is already done, and the other one is ongoing right now. And for those of you that have joined us, maybe we pulled you away from the game. Maybe you're finding a way to listen to us and stream the game at the same time. If so, that won't hurt our feelings. We'll make sure to keep you updated on the scores of the Rams and Raiders games, or the game, because that game actually was pretty interesting. I was watching it before the stream, and we'll keep you updated on that. But quick note on the Jets at Lions game. So first of all, Stafford just looked terrible today. It just looked like they weren't prepared, mentally not in it. He had 4 interceptions. I don't know what was going on. It's a home opener. That's the last thing the fans want to see. That's the last way that you want to play. I know they have a new coach, Matt Patricia, I think he was the offensive coordinator for the Patriots at least the last couple of years, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I know he was last year, and I think at least a couple of years. So anyway, that's not going the way that they want to. I don't want to overreact yet, because I think the Lions have a lot of talent on their team, and they just need to see it coalesce. And the other thing is, people are going to overreact about Sam Darnold after this, because he opened the game with a pick 6, and then after that he played pretty well, and people are going to say, I already saw reporters from ESPN saying that he's the next Andrew Luck and all that. Come on, stop that. We every year, first round draft pick quarterbacks, we get this, he's the next Aaron Rodgers, or he's the best thing since sliced bread after one game. You can never tell anything after one game.
Do you remember all the hype with Matt Flynn?
A little bit, yeah. And see what happened with that.
Yeah, the one game where, Aaron Rodgers didn't play. He comes in there, throws 6 touchdowns, and signs this big contract. Oh, Matt Flynn's going to be great. And then where's he now?
Yeah. So the Rams at Raiders game, just a couple of things. So on the Raiders opening drive, somehow the laws of gravity were suspended for beast mode. Marshawn Lynch was at, I think, around the 6 or 7 yard line, rumbling in, had O-linemen pushing him, defensive guys trying to keep him out of the end zone, and at one point, the ball was just not collapsing. He was not going down, so one of the Rams cornerbacks literally just jumped onto the pile to weigh everybody down, and he still got into the end zone. It was one of the weirdest things that defied physics in football that I've ever seen, but I guess Marshawn Lynch is one of the only guys that can actually do that kind of run. It was pretty crazy. So that scored the Raiders' first 7 points, and right now the game is tied 10-10 with 30 seconds left in the half. So still a tight game, good one to watch. Like we said, you're not going to hurt our feelings if you have that going on in the background. So the Atlanta at Philly game, that was the very first game to open up the season. And of course, first play of the 2018 NFL regular season, a false start. We saw some pretty bad quarterback play. Philadelphia has Carson Wentz as plan B if Nick Foles doesn't work out. I think pretty quickly they're going to realize that Nick Foles isn't going to work out. If I was Philly fans, I wouldn't be too worried, though. Great ending to the game, though. Fantastic, exciting ending to that game. The new catch rule actually affected one of the plays. So we didn't cover this last week when we talked about the rule changes because there wasn't anything that would really major that changed. But one of the things that changed about the catch rule is that you don't, if you catch the football and you make a football move, but then you go to the ground and if you catch the football and maintain it as you go to the ground, but then you lose it on the ground, that still counts as a catch. Whereas before, the rule was that you had to maintain control through contact with the ground. And my understanding of the new rule, it's a little confusing, but my understanding of the rule is it no longer requires that. Did you look into that rule at all, Joseph, to see? That's my understanding, but feel free to disagree if you had a different interpretation of the rule.
No, I haven't looked into it, but it did come up. There were a few replays on some of the games I watched where that new rule was mentioned.
Okay. Man, we've been talking about this for so long. All 15-yard penalty flags need to be automatically reviewed. And yes, especially now that there's this quote-unquote point of emphasis on D linemen landing on quarterbacks. It's just every sack just seems like it's going to turn into a penalty. And because this is something that they're just going more and more heavy towards protecting quarterbacks, we need to start seeing reviews of plays like that because there were so many legitimate sacks this week that were turned into 15-yard penalties against the defense because the refs are just going way overboard with this. What do you think about that? Do you think that all pre-whistle 15-yard penalty type fouls should be reviewed automatically?
I'm not sure about automatically. I don't know if we can set up another challenge system or 2 minutes before the half, whatever they have with all scoring plays now. But I wish replay was just done faster. I always want, whether it's baseball or even basketball, just wondering why it takes referees so long to make certain calls that are very clear, and why we don't just have every angle needed at all times. I don't know if we should be reviewing every single one, but if it's clear, like on the Jumbotron, that it's a bad call, then I think the teams should have a challenge system in place of that, on top of what we have now, to challenge certain calls.
So your solution is that you would make the 15-yard type foul calls be included in what coaches can challenge? Or do you think it should be a separate, so they have their two challenges, but then maybe a separate pool of challenges that they have for those types of fouls or those types of fouls?
It should definitely be separate because there should not be a timeout penalty on the line. You shouldn't lose a timeout because you misjudged, or mischallenged seeing a guy, hit head to head on contact.
Do you think
So it should be so that's definitely a second pool, and I don't know how they're going to determine how many to have, but shouldn't lose a timeout because of it.
I can see that system being abused, though. I not that I disagree with this idea of a separate pool, but I can see it being abused where a defensive team or the coach of the team on defense, they see their guy, let's say, roughing the passer, and it's not even necessarily it was actually a penalty. It wasn't a close call, but he challenges it to slow down the offensive momentum. Like if maybe they had 3 or 4 plays back to back and the no huddle offense, they're just driving down the field, and he just calls the penalty just to slow down. Obviously, the 15 yards is already going to be implemented, so it's not like calling the challenge would add the 15 yards. That's that's after the fact. That's already been done, right? So I don't know. I think it's an idea. We don't have to hash out it all now. We're not on the NFL rules committee, but I think that specific implementation might be able to be abused. But I do agree that having a separate system for challenging, or maybe even having it automatically reviewed, would help protect against this ridiculous points of emphasis system that we're seeing. So I watched the Seattle at Denver game. I won't go into that too much other than to say Denver's D looks great. Von Miller had 3 sacks. The team had 6 sacks. Seattle still has no O-line and no run game. Doug Baldwin is injured. He sprained his MCL. So I don't know how long he's going to be out.
No, not Doug Baldwin.
Our favorite receiver. Not. I hope my idea that Seattle is going to be the NFC flop will come true after this. Hopefully it was a sign of good things to come. We both watched the Chicago at Green Bay game, man. What a game. Aaron Rodgers. Tell me about Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, he really deserves that massive contract extension he just got. He's something special. I mean, watching going into that fourth quarter, and definitely thinking he was going to make it close, but it was also good to see the Packers defense hold up, even though the Bears, they kind of slowed down a little bit. I don't know if you saw that, but the Bears lost a little bit of life, probably because Aaron Rodgers was taking it away from them simultaneously. But man, number one, he is the best quarterback on the run that I've ever seen, the most accurate with the best arm on the run. And even though he's not really fast, he's not like Cam Newton or Russell Wilson. He's not nimble. He's really smart and can get out of place and get out of the disaster when the O-line breaks. And yeah, he's incredible. It was a sight to watch. Apparently, that was the largest deficit fourth quarter comeback in Packers history.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if there's one guy you want to have on the field to overcome a deficit like that, it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was insane. So that game had butt fumble 2.0, Trubisky butt fumble, and the injury scare was ominous. I mean, when Rodgers went down, I was scared out of my mind that it was going to be a repeat of last year and just not good. But he came back, and not only did he come back, he did more than come back. He just dominated. So Pittsburgh at Cleveland, that game, when I watched the game, I don't know if it was the angle of the camera, but it just looked like Silent Hill out there. The quality of the game, it was played like a snow game. And there were 23 total penalties between both teams. The Steelers looked sloppy. Big Ben was inaccurate. There were tons of drop balls. I mean, it's what you expect. It was in the rain. It was a rain game, so you expect some things like that. But the Steelers missed a field goal in overtime with 1:48 left. It just was not a good day for either team. T.J. Watt had 4 sacks, though. Did you know? Okay, so did you know the record for most sacks in a game, in an NFL game?
About 5 seconds after I looked it up when you texted me.
Okay, I did the exact same thing. Great minds think alike. So, yeah, Derek Thomas has the record for 7 sacks in one game against the Seahawks on November 11th,
91.
1990, right?
90.
1990
or 91.
or 1991, one of those 2 years. I checked that because I was like, whoa, this guy got 4 sacks. I got to check what's the record, and it wasn't even close to the record, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Did you see Alden Smith on there? He had 5.5.
No, I didn't. I did see, though, that Derek Thomas had another game where he had 6, like 8 years later, though, which is also insane. So, yeah, real quick, on the injury front, so Doug Baldwin had the MCL sprain, and this is just major players. We're not going to go down through the list of everybody, but Greg Olsen had a foot injury. We're not sure how long he's out. And Delaney Walker got carted off the field with a dislocated ankle. That one looked pretty serious. He might be out for a while. So what did you... we're going to get to the Niner and Miami games in just a second, but what was your general feeling about this week?
A lot of rust. So I guess 2 things. A lot of rust and a lot more balance within the league. I mean, I know we cannot judge, with just one game under our belts for the NFL, but a lot of the teams that you thought would be really good were a little kind of slow and didn't put up a big fight. Like even like the Patriots, like they were good. Yes, Tom Brady was Tom Brady, but he wasn't super prolific. And the Texans, played very poorly at times. So the fact that they still only won, I think it was 27-20 or 27-17, then it still, and they were at home too. So it wasn't like anything special. The Vikings, I mean, for how bad, the Niners played at times, which we're going to get to in a minute, though the Vikings had a swarming defense in the fourth quarter, especially, still wasn't an overwhelming game. The Saints, what the heck happened there? So, and outside of Aaron Rodgers getting injured and having a miraculous fourth quarter, even that game was closer than we thought. So yeah. a lot of rust and more balance than usual, I guess, what we expect, even for the first game, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, we always expect there to be some upsets and rust and people coming out not prepared. That's normal. This year this opening week just felt like a more extreme version of that. So okay, let's roll right into the segment number 2, which is our narrowed focus talk on the Niners and Miami games. So, San Francisco at Minnesota this week. It was a 10 a.m. Pacific start in Minnesota. So I'll start with the good. The good is really 2 names. The first name is DeForest Buckner. 2.5 sacks. He had 3 all of last year. He was just a beast yesterday. I was really happy to see him break out. I think this might be his breakout year. He was drafted 2 years ago, and his last year, 2 years ago, he didn't really do a whole lot. Last year, he was an impact player, but it just didn't get through in the sacks, in the stats. But this year, I think he has a lot of promise. Definitely, I think something that teams are going to have to scheme for. And then, my goodness, Fred Warner. So we picked him up in the 3rd round this year. At 12 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 1 tackle for loss. I mean, the forced fumble was a tackle from behind on Dalvin Cook, who was just slipping through defenders left and right, and he just punched the ball out of his arm. Great performance. I hope to see great things from him. If him and Reuben Foster can play well together, there will be one of the more formidable linebacker duos in the league. And then the other good thing was Pierre Garçon is a great tough receiver, but he got totally shut down, completely shut down in this game. But even with that, there were other wide receivers and tight ends that rose up to take his place. So that shows depth to me, and that was really encouraging. So the bad, there's more bad things than good things this week, unfortunately. So number 1, interceptions. Our beloved Jimmy G had 3. All of them were really ill-advised throws. the one at the very end in the fourth quarter was the worst of them all. I honestly don't even know why he threw the ball. Did you see that play where he just kind of was about to get sacked and then he just sort of tossed it forward?
Yeah, well, the second one where the wide receiver slipped, I don't think he gets that much penalty for that one because there was like a side angle they showed.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
Yeah, if he hadn't had slipped, I think that he would have at least been able to attempt to catch it. But the first and the third one, definitely his fault.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's fair. I think the second one's not too much his fault. The interesting thing is, though, I thought the stat line made his day look worse than it was, actually, because outside of those 3 picks, he actually did okay. Was that your general impression? Like he looked okay out there other than that?
Yeah, he overthrew some balls. Okay. Let's hear. Yeah, he overthrew some balls and he looked better on his feet, but he looked nervous. He generally looked nervous. And when his offensive line kind of broke down, he was under pressure. He didn't seem like he was doing great. But the biggest thing that I was, I guess, frustrated at him was when it was towards the end. It was like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they're down. I think it was 3rd and goal, and he throws to Kittle, and he's wide open, and he threw it above him. Like, I don't know how he missed that throw. I think a high schooler could have made that throw.
I agree. That was a terribly overthrown ball.
he was open, simple slant towards the middle, the goalpost, and didn't even need that much juice on it. It was physically like a 20-yard throw at best, and he overthrew him by like 3 feet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my policy on that. I say, suspend players when they make bad plays like that, but
we can't afford it, man. We finally have a quarterback. We can't suspend him already. Like, we can't do that.
Well, when he makes throws like that, then he better throw the sink at him.
Oh my goodness.
He looked all right. All right, I'm picking on him, but he'll get better. I think he'll be better. The Vikings looked insane in that fourth quarter, though. Their defense was flying all over the place.
They did, yeah. They have a young, really talented defense. They're going to go far.
Like, I think even Brady himself would have had some fits if he played in Minnesota today in the fourth quarter, or yesterday in the fourth quarter.
Oh yeah, for sure. So then next, penalties and turnovers, just really dumb play. Like the Alfred Morris second quarter fumble at the goal line. Solomon Thomas 4th and 1 neutral zone infraction with 2:45 left in the game with the Niners down 24-16. You gotta, if someone is out there on a 4th and 1 trying to fake you out, you gotta stay still. That's just an inexcusable play. Another reason to be disappointed with Solomon Thomas. I really need to see more from him. He was a 3rd overall pick last draft. He did basically nothing last year. So far this game, I'm not really seeing him mature. He needs to start showing that he's worthy of that draft pick position. Did we just lose Joseph? That's the biggest question. I think we just lost Joseph on our stream, so we're going to go ahead and try to get him back. Yeah, it looks like his computer crashed, so we're going to go ahead and get him back. I think he's probably going to restart his computer. We'll just keep rolling. Penalties and turnovers were inexcusable. And then, of course, right after that 4th and 1 disaster, Jimmy G throws a pick with 1:30 left in the game. You can't do that when you're 1 touchdown away from tying the game. It's just they were so many times they shot themselves in the foot. And even despite that, they were still only down 8 at the end of the game, and they had multiple opportunities. Looks like he's coming back online. Hello, Joseph.
Hey, I'm back.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the practice squad.
Am I the backup quarterback or backup kicker today?
I think you can be the backup kicker today. We'll see. Maybe you'll just be Jimmy G throwing picks. That could be the other. That could be your backup. So, I was just going over the pick Jimmy G threw with 1:30 left in the fourth quarter, just explaining that you just can't have you can't have make those kind of mistakes if you want to win games. So the other thing I noticed was defensive backs not looking for the ball during coverage. This is something that just drives me crazy, up the wall crazy, especially when it's an end zone play. When cornerbacks are covering a guy, and they might even be all over the guy, but they don't look back to try to get the ball. They don't even make a play for the ball. They just sort of have their eyes glued on the receiver. I see that with younger guys, with younger corners. Is that something that you think they can be coached out of? How do you fix that? I've been curious about that because I just see that so much. And I want it to stop. It's been such a problem for the Niners.
Wait, do you mean a corner that's covering a wide receiver? And maybe I missed some of this. And he sees the wide receiver he's covering, his hands go up, and he doesn't turn around? Or, I mean,
yeah, he doesn't turn around. He doesn't. He knows the ball's coming. Like, he knows that he sees the receiver turning in the other direction to try to catch the pass, and he still just doesn't turn around to try to make a play for the ball. Like, what's wrong in that situation? What are they doing wrong? Is it that they're not... I mean, should they be turning their head to try to see the ball coming in? Should they be looking at the receiver's eyes to see where the ball's coming? I mean, I don't play that position, so I can't sit here. I'm Monday evening cornerbacking, right? But how do they fix that?
Well, I mean, in real time, how much reaction time does the quarterback have to turn? Remember, he has a helmet on, so his vision's limited. To turn and try to find the ball. If he can discern that the wide receiver is going to be, the ball's being thrown to him, then there's probably not enough time to do that anyways. So if I were him, I would just want to put my hands either in the area of the wide receiver's face he can't see, or actually I don't know if that's a penalty or not if you don't touch him, or put my hands in the area of his hands as he's going up to knock the ball away. Because I've seen plays like that before where cornerbacks read the wide receiver, and as he's going for it, they extend out and, either inadvertently or intentionally, if they knew it was coming to him, knock the ball away. Actually, I saw that today in one of the games I was watching. I can't remember who it was, though, but it was a touchdown play. Like, the team that scored, they scored the touchdown, and it looked like the defender could tell the ball was going to the wide receiver, and he didn't stick his hand out to do anything. Like, the guy's reaching out, and he goes to catch it, and the guy defending him just doesn't put his hand out to try to deflect the ball as it's coming in. And that was really frustrating. Can't remember which game it was, though, but I saw it tonight.
$1 million fine. Instantly. Other than bad tackling, which is, of course, just a basic skill that's inexcusable, Dalvin Cook was... I think his team just poured butter all over him right before the game because he just wasn't tackled yesterday. So that was odd. They just need to get better at that. So talk to me about Miami. Talk to me about Tennessee at Miami.
Well, there was the multiple lightning strike delays, which apparently made it the longest game in NFL history.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way. And the Miami players were eating barbecue chicken during the break. But anyways.
Wait, they were?
Yeah. I was reading how during the delay, because the delay was like over 3 hours long. So they were just hungry, so they had some,
you have to have
some barbecue chicken.
Man snack in there.
Yeah. I mean,
were they barbecuing like just over on the sideline?
that I did not read about. I don't know.
See, that might be more interesting than the first 3 quarters of this game.
No, that is true, because the first 3 quarters were atrocious. I don't know if my dad is listening right now, but That was some of the most boring football I'd ever seen. But as I'm sure you can attest, Jeremy, that fourth quarter was pretty exciting.
It was. I agree.
That was a fun fourth quarter, and actually, it kind of started like around midway of the third quarter, which I'll get to in a minute. But overall, kind of a tease, to be honest. See this kind of every year, the last 5-6 years, at times. Could we be good? Are we not going to be? Are we going to be 8-8? Probably. We're not playing the greatest team in Tennessee. Their run game was off. Mariota looked rusty. He put on some weight. He put on some muscle, in a good way, but he didn't. I think they're training him to be more of a pocket passer than relying on his legs as much, which I don't know if is a good thing or not, because he's quick and he's got speed and acceleration, and he's shown that the last 2 years he's been playing, and it looked like that his teammates or that the coaches have said don't run. Like, it wouldn't be good for him to run.
You know why they're telling him that, right?
Why?
Because it's a passing league.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can't run too much because this is a passing league.
Yeah, I know. Oh man. So their run game was off. Their offensive line was not very good. He had some missed throws. He looked rusty as well. Kind of like Matt Ryan, actually. They both looked pretty rusty this last week, among others. So we played well in the fourth quarter, right? If Miami plays the way they did in the fourth quarter, then we can win 10 games, and I'm excited for the season. If we play like at all, yeah, I mean, the weather probably affected it, but it affected Tennessee as well. And it was just sloppy. There were penalties. The running game was okay. Frank Gore actually played pretty well. Frank Gore was solid. Kenyon Drake, he had 1 or 2 good runs, but overall wasn't very effective. He's fast. I'll say that. He's very fast, and I see potential in Drake. I know I mentioned last week that I didn't see much in him, but I was quickly corrected by my dad about that. He's been a Dolphins fan for over 40 years, but so he's like, "Oh, you got to point out that Drake was really good." He could be. So if you're a Dolphins fan out there, or an Alabama fan, and you saw him play in college, he could be good, but he didn't show too much this last game. Frank Gore was all right. Our wide receiving core was okay. Tannehill was all right. I think he was 20 for 28 with 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. He made a couple really good throws. He overthrew a couple times. He has a slower release than I'd like. Again, it's average, so we'll see. Our defense was okay at times. Robert Quinn did okay. Our secondary, again, was all right, but there were times where we put a lot of pressure on Tennessee. If I had to suggest 2 changes I'd want to see the most, it would be offensive line protection, because Tannehill is one of those guys to where he crumbles under pressure and bad protection, and our offensive line was pretty weak on Sunday. So if we had a solid offensive line, I think that boosts Miami's wins plus 1.5, 2.5 games with Tannehill. And then second would be our secondary. It's just inconsistent. They'll make big plays, every now and then, and at times they won't, and they misread coverage, or the coverage is poor, and there were some good big plays that were made for Miami, but they're inconsistent. That's the issue. Because of that inconsistency, that's why I think we're 8-8.
Yeah, I saw that inconsistency yesterday. I mean, yesterday was more of an example of the flashes of greatness, right? Like Rashad Jones had a great game, the 2 picks.
Yes,
the secondary looked pretty good yesterday, but you're right. On the whole, they are inconsistent, and it would be good. It would be good if they got one more safety or corner in there, like one more better player, star type player in there. I think you guys aren't too far away from having a decent secondary.
Yeah, I'm okay with our offensive pieces right now, provided Tannehill's more consistent, which I think is actually contingent on the offensive line. I think if one thing had to be fixed for the offense, it would be the offensive line because Frank Gore is going to be a solid backup back, and he had a few runs where it's like he still got it. He still had that good running ability. Do have some hope in Drake, Stills, Amendola, and Parker. Will show promise. So offensive line and a consistent secondary, and I'll give him 10 wins.
I think that's fair. All right, so I think that's a wrap for our game coverage for the week. As always, there's so much more to talk about than we actually have time for, but some really interesting games this week, and we're hoping for some just as good or better action next week. So our next segment is our Refs Say the Darndest Things. This week, we had two pretty sweet Chris Collinsworth quotes. This was taken from the Atlanta at Philadelphia game. Quote number 1, Philadelphia cornerbacks just need to make tackles. No duh, my friend. No duh.
Wait, why is that under refs? Say the darndest things.
Oh, I'm sorry. It should be announcers say the darndest things. You're right.
Okay.
Refs say the darndest things sometimes too when they mumble into their mics, but that's not as interesting as the color commentation. So the second one, also from our friend Chris Collinsworth, no one has longer arms than Julio Jones. Really? I mean, did he check that? Did he measure them? Did he go out onto the field with a measuring tape and measure his arms? I'm pretty sure there's at least half a dozen defensive ends that have significantly longer arms than Julio Jones. I haven't measured his arms either. I could invite him over to my house right now, I guess, but why do you say something like that? What's the, I love the hyperbole though. It just makes it makes the watching the games more interesting, especially if the game isn't very interesting to watch.
Dude, I missed it then. I should have told you because when I was watching the Packers game today, Chris Collinsworth had another one today. It was about Devontae Adams. It was, I think, on their last touchdown. No, it was the second to last touchdown they scored in the fourth quarter. And Rodgers throws a pass. Adams catches it like the 7 or 8, makes a few juke moves, and then goes in. And Chris Collinsworth says something along the lines of, Adams is one of the slickest guys in the league, or something like that. And I should have written it down because that wasn't the exact quotes. And I thought to myself, I'm going to put this down for the podcast, but I never did.
I just love how during the games that are clearly subpar games, especially when you have two garbage teams in a worthless game, like a meaningless game for the season, they always pick one player that they make sounds like they make to sound like the Tom Brady of the game. Right?
Oh, dude, John Gruden was the worst at that.
He
did
picks
that
one guy, he zeroes in on one guy, and he just makes him sound like the best thing since sliced bread. It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious every time they try to make one guy just be, from this terrible team, a guy that's, every other week he's just average, right? But this game, they have to find one guy to get excited about because there's nothing to be excited about. All right, so we missed some last week. We wanted to cover some special discussion topics, and we didn't get the chance to because we were so excited talking about so many other things. So this week, we're finally going to get a chance to do that. So Joseph is going to lead us through our first special discussion segment. Joseph, take it away.
So I don't even know where to start. Jerry Jones wants to add 2 more games to the regular season. As people know, this year, once the season's over, the 2019 CBA, Collective Bargaining Agreement, will commence, and the NFL Players Union and representatives, along with Roger Goodell and all of the owners and presidents, will meet. They'll have a series of meetings and try to figure out what the new agreement will be. In their topics will come up as, player minimums, veteran free agency, draft pick compensation, what else? Kneeling, the flag kneeling will come up definitely, but also about the length of the season. And Jerry Jones, good old Jerry, oh man, from Dallas, Um, added another great insight to his long list of accomplishments during his stint at the Cowboys. So he thinks that they should take away 2 preseason games and add 2 regular season games. So after mentioning that we should have 18 regular season games, he says this, quote, I think candidly, it's probably physically better for players than it is to have the longer preseason, the longer practicing. Our studies show that we actually have a ramped up injury situation with players during preseason as opposed to the injury factor in the regular season. He goes on and says, it is debatable. Jones acknowledged it is debatable as to whether there is more of a health risk, but said, quote, I think it's defensible, and really I did present it on the basis that it's something I think it does, and that's create a safer game for the players. Now, many things just to say here and rant about, so I'll start with this. These players, all NFL players, go from a state of not playing football to a state of playing football, right? That's the ramp up that he sees, and that's fine, right? Data is data, and I don't deny that they have that data there, but when you interpret the data, that's a whole other thing, and you come to conclusions. And his conclusion, to be honest, is atrocious because the ramp up is going to happen no matter what. You could have a 5-game regular season. You could have a 500-game regular season with no preseason. And you are always going to go from a state of not playing football to playing football, 100%. So the ramp up will exist no matter what. So the fact that he's suggesting that it's a preseason issue, which is completely arbitrary, right? Oh, we play in August. Like that actually matters. So that not seeing how arbitrary that is, that doesn't matter, is kind of sad. And it kind of worries me. First I thought it was kind of a joke, but it kind of worries me because this is a guy with influence. And these owners, make decisions. So if this is the kind of the mindset and the critical thinking or lack thereof that is present within, the commissioner and higher ups in the NFL, whether they're on the union side or the owner side, is really sad. And going into the CBA, if this is the kind of thinking and methodology that's put into any issue for the NFL, like we're screwed. So let's see here. Yeah, even if the data is correct and preseason miraculously was a bigger issue for causing injuries, in no way does it follow that you should add more regular season games. Adding more regular season games is not going to make it healthier. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
So he has some weird objective to keep the total between preseason and regular season fixed at 20, which doesn't really matter because preseason, if it doesn't ultimately matter to the record anyways, and you're trying to say that it is safer for guys to not play preseason, then just keep it at 16 games. It's already perfect. NFL already has the most perfect regular season and postseason setup of all the major sports. So there's no reason to change here. The analogy I want to give, and then Jeremy, I'll hand it off to you, is imagine, not to make it political here, but I will for a second. Imagine if we wanted to get rid of the top 10% of the wealthiest people. We're tired of you making all the money. We're just going to ban the top 10 wealthiest people from our country. Well, you do that, and guess what? You still have 100% people, and you're still going to have a 10%. And then you do it again, and you do it again. And until you get rid of the very last person, you're always going to have a top 10%, just as you're always going to have a ramp-up effect. And no matter how long you make the regular season or preseason, you're going to have that. So I'll stop ranting there.
So I'm okay with them getting rid of the wealthiest 10% as long as all of their wealth comes to me. That's so. Yeah, I completely agree that what he said is off kilter, and I think you're right. You're right to point out that he has data, and we have no reason to reject his data as data. Right? It's data his team has. We have to believe, or we should believe, give him the benefit of the doubt that he has that data. Okay, that says that that he sees more injuries on his team in the preseason than the regular season. Now, unfortunately, what that data doesn't tell us, or what he hasn't told us about the data, is whether that is players that he considers to be more valuable that are injured more in the preseason versus the regular season. And that's the key, right? Is because we don't know that, we don't really know how he's analyzing that data. And of course, you would think that for an owner, they care about the players that make them money, right? So I think it's fair for us to assume that he's talking about the players that are the star players on his team, the players that are paid the most, that have the best performance. Those are the players that are getting more injured. Now, it's possible he's just talking about in general, right? It could be that, but let's say it is that. Let's say he's not being greedy. He's just saying this is just what the data says, that more players are getting injured in the preseason than in regular season, just straight up. It doesn't matter their performance, just the numbers are higher. Okay. Even if that's true, we don't really know why. And his idea that I thought you explained this well, that this idea that there's a ramp up, you go from a state of not playing football to a state of playing football. That ramp up from going to 0 to 1 happens no matter where you delineate between preseason and regular season, right? And that's the whole point. Yeah. That's the whole argument against what he's saying. So it's just illogical, and I don't know why. I almost feel like he has some other agenda in this, right? Like maybe he thinks their team's going to make more money by having 2 more regular season games, because the ratings for preseason, I don't think we do know that the ratings for preseason games are in the toilet compared to regular season. So they would make more money.
I don't think it's that, though.
Okay. Well, I mean, what do you think? What do you think it is? Like, why would he make such a big deal about that?
Well, unless this podcast blows up and one day he ever listens to this, so no offense now.
Possible. It's possible.
Jerry, if you hear this, but I think it's just a lack of critical thinking. I mean, this is something I'd probably point fault at in, a lot of sports, quote unquote, experts or analysts, is people who have the same data that we have, but don't know how to analyze stuff. So I think it's just him rambling, thinking he knows what he's talking about, and just being illogical and not realizing the ramifications of what happens when you make fallacies, when you make real world conclusions off fallacious thinking.
Right.
So that's honestly what I think it is.
I mean, one reason that you and I theorized last week was for the data, right? Not for why he is interpreting it the way he is, but one reason that we came up with for why his data says that more players get injured in the preseason than the regular season is that the first string players come in kind of cold, right? And they play usually the first 2 games of the preseason, they'll play 1 series, maybe 2. And then the third game is their real dress rehearsal for the season, where they play usually a half. And then the 4th game, they'll sit completely. So they're really only playing about 3/4 of football over the course of 4 games. And when you're playing that little, you're playing kind of cold. You don't have a lot of practice in between. There's a higher likelihood of injury. And also, I mean, a lot of those guys know that they're starting, right? So they're not playing for anything. They know the game doesn't matter. They know they're not playing for their position. And when you lose mental focus, there's a higher likelihood of injury. And then on top of that, you've got the guys that are 2nd and 3rd string players that are playing for their jobs. They actually have something to play for, but they're also worse, which means there's going to be more flags, more penalties, probably just more general roughness, because these guys are trying to feed their families. So there's a higher likelihood of injuries there. Now, even that you could argue with, well, a higher level of drive to play doesn't necessarily equate to higher injury. I can accept that as not necessarily connecting. But I mean, beyond that, I can't really fathom why preseason would cause more injuries, let alone that by reducing preseason and increasing regular season, that would somehow magically reduce overall injuries. We know that wouldn't happen, because that, like we already described, that's just illogical.
Yeah, I mean, it's causation, mixing causation and correlation.
Right.
The famous example is ice cream sales increase the same time that shark attacks increase. So we should stop selling ice cream.
Right.
It's even worse though for like the guys that are trying to, try out for the practice squad, because outside of us, of course.
I gotta say, sorry, we're full. We got 2 guys on the staff. There's no.
We've already made the practice
squad.
Sorry,
go somewhere else.
We've already made it, so we don't have to try out any further. But the guys that are not even going to be third stringers and know that for them it's either make the practice squad or not. They're going out there like Rambo,
right?
Because those guys only make, I think, $6 to $8 grand a week, and considering that's not even for a full season, and they probably are training as much as they can in the off season, they're not making that much to be on the practice squad. But it's trying to fulfill a lifelong dream. It's okay enough money, depending on how much they spend to train on the off season. So I would definitely bet that the guys that aren't fighting for third string positions, but are fighting for practice squad positions, those guys are going out there complete 110%.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you think that would cause more injury?
So you brought up a good point. It depends on how he's categorizing the data. If he's caring about players that really matter, one, there could only be one injury, and it would be big news if it's someone that matters, right?
Absolutely.
We see this every preseason. So if it's players that matter, then I'm going to say most likely not. But if it's just injuries overall, then I'm going to say yes, because you probably have a lot of those, probably say Rambo guys playing the first 2 or 3 games, and they're giving it their all. So if we may not care about them, right? We may not hear them in the news, but if he's just looking at data and pure data, then there may be 10 times as many injuries for non-significant players. And Jerry Jones sees that, but we don't see it because we don't care about fourth string players.
Right.
I would say, so this, I'm wondering if we can try to propose something better. I had an idea, so I want you to tell me what you think. I'm wondering if, let's say we keep preseason at 4 games. I'm wondering if the first 2 games should only be, or let's say the first 3 games. The first 2 or 3 games should only exist to delineate between practice squad players and third string, second string players. So no starters play at all, let's say the first 2 games, and you have a major wave of cuts to say, okay, you're on the practice squad, and then, okay, you guys may have a chance. And then the third game, the starters play a little bit, but it's mostly to go from third string to second string. And then the fourth game can just be the starters. It can almost be like a exhibition match that they have in practice, or put in some of the second string guys and to give the first string guys a run for their money. So that the basic idea is the range of talents on any given moment on the field is as small as possible. You don't want to have first string guys playing with practice squad guys.
Right,
you want
because it doesn't give you valuable information.
Exactly. So decrease that range through a series of cuts and through each week, so that it's fourth stringers with third stringers, and then second with third, and then first and seconds.
Right.
I think that would help a little bit. Be curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I know before the system was that they had, after week 3, or after the third preseason game, they had the cut from the 90-man roster to the 75, right? And then or it was 70 or 75, I don't remember. And then after week 4 was when they cut down to the 53.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe that was not the smartest thing to do, because it not only does it put more pressure on coaches to release more guys all at once, and more guys hit the market, and it's harder to wade through people, but it also means that you're carrying guys that you know are not going to be on the team longer into the preseason. So you're just getting less valuable data by having as many guys on the roster as you have. I don't know. I don't think that would necessarily affect injuries, but I think it would be interesting to maybe see them change the cut system or go to something like what you said, where it's the first 2 games are really just, second string guys or second and third string or just the practice squad guys, just to see who makes the first cut.
Yeah.
So just a quick update. So the Rams at Raiders game, it's tied 13-13 with 3:10 left in the third. Oakland's driving the ball. It's a 3rd and 2 at the Oakland 16. So I expected the Rams to kind of come in and just roll. So this is a little surprising to me.
How's Gurley playing?
So Gurley has 13 carries for 62 yards. Derek Carr is 20 for 27 with 199 yards and a pick. And then Jared Cook from Oakland, he's having a great game. 6 receptions, 113 yards. So yeah, see what happens there. That's going to come down to the wire. And for watchers of the show, I think we're probably going to end up ending the show just before the game ends. So you'll get to catch the last exciting few minutes of that game. Okay, so great discussion on Jerry Jones. It's just really fun to kind of break down when someone so high up that has so much money and so much influence says something dumb. We get to talk about it and break it down. So our next segment, another special discussion segment, is on this list of top 100 current NFL players that ESPN came out with, and Joseph did a bunch of research on this. So go ahead and take it away again, Joseph.
Yeah, so first want to just kind of go over their methodology. And I love when this happens. I like analyzing players and teams and, seeing kind of, who are the greatest X of all time and whatever. So when I see something like this, I always like looking at ESPN and these so-called experts and, kind of seeing how they match up. And most of the time, I'll admit, I'm disappointed. I think their objectivity is kind of weak and their analysis is overrated. So I was hoping to see something better out of this, because I'll say the best thing about this list, this ranking, was the graphics and the organization. It was organized really well. You could look at, where the players were and what teams. You could pick by team, and they would all show up. You could see which teams had the most. The graphics were great, but the actual list itself, I think, is, well, pretty bad. We're going to go over that. So here's their methodology, quoting them. We asked a panel of ESPN NFL experts to rate players based on how good they will be in 2018, using a scale from 0 to 100. We asked them to not emphasize past performance or positional value, only greatness this season. We then averaged their ratings to create the top 100. So first things first, hopefully you guys caught it. They've already contradicted themselves and made this an impossible ranking. There's really only 2 ways that you could do a ranking like this if you're comparing players across all positions. You can either A, look at their absolute value, right? The value that each position gives. So even if, we know that quarterbacks are inherently more value than kickers, but you could still compare that on an absolute scale. Or 2, the only other option is to say, how great is a player at a given position relative to the best of that position. So essentially, if a 100 is Tom Brady, then we'll give Matt Ryan a 92. Okay? And if Von Miller is a 100 for his position, then, and we'll just say linebacker for him to make it easy for now, then we'll give, Eric Kendricks a 95. And then you go off of that. Well, if that's the case, then it means that the first 22 positions are all going to be different players, right? You're going to have the top quarterback at number 1. They're all going to be tied for first, basically. There's no other way to compare them. So when you just say, rate on how good they are, but you don't give an objective, you just say how good are they? Oh, give a number 0 to 100. What's that number based on? How good they are. Oh, so what's the ranking? Oh, 0 to 100. It's circular reasoning.
Right. It's like on a
So
scale of 1 to chickens, how good is this player?
yeah. So there's no objective. It's circular and it's simultaneously contradictory. Those two examples, the two lists I just gave, those really are the only ways that you can try to rank players based on some pristine condition, like the best linebacker of all time. And then you rate that. So just from the get-go, they blew it. And that's why in my head, whether I say it or physically do the air quotes, every time I read something, sports, baseball, football, basketball experts, I always do the air quotes in my minds because I know that most likely I'm expecting something that wasn't done critically. So let's just give their top 10, and maybe this will become more self-evident. So here's our top 10 going from 10 to number 1. Number 10, Khalil Mack, Jalen Ramsey, Julio Jones, Le'Veon Bell, Drew Brees, Von Miller, Antonio Brown, Aaron Donald, and then the top 2 are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. So we'll get to that in a minute. We're going to go over the overrated and underrated, but I want to ask you, Jeremy, I know you looked at this list a little bit. Could you take a guess? Take a guess as to just name 5 teams. Which 5 teams do you think had the most players on this list?
So I faithfully did not look at the actual numbers. So I did see a lot of purple jerseys. So I think the Vikings are going to be one of those teams. I think let's see. I want to say the Vikings, the Saints, the Steelers, the Seahawks, and was this done before or after the Mac trade? I guess probably before, right? So
This was before.
Yeah, so I'll say the Raiders for the 5th.
So give me 2 seconds.
I think I'm wrong on some of those, but a couple of those were just kind of a little arbitrary because I know this list is kind of arbitrary. So
yeah, so you got right. So you said the Saints. So the Saints had 5.
Okay.
You said the Vikings. They're tied with the Eagles. The Eagles and the Vikings had 7. I
forgot the Eagles. That was dumb. They're totally on there, right?
Yeah. The Vikings and Eagles are tied for the most at 7.
Okay.
So, dude, I'll go to the surprises that you listed first. Because ironically, you actually listed some of the surprises, and then I'll go to the rest of the list. The Raiders only had 1, and it was Khalil Mack. So that's I guess a heads up before I finish my segments. Where is Derek Carr? How is Derek Carr not in the top 100?
Yeah, that's a tragedy. That's messed up. Something's wrong with your metric when that happens.
Oh, yeah. Did you say the Cowboys?
No, I did not.
Okay, the Cowboys had 5.
Really? Okay.
Who was the team that you said they?
I said the Seahawks.
Okay, yeah. So the Seahawks were that. Seahawks had 4, so they didn't make the top. I have here 8 teams, so they weren't in the top 8. Sorry, 9, top 9 teams. But they had 4. The Niners only had 1.
Yeah, I saw that.
Some other surprises. Patriots had 2. Ravens had 2. So yeah, so the top teams, Vikings and Eagles had 7. Chargers, Jags, and Falcons had 6. You should have got the Jags. I think you should have got that one. I should have,
yeah. The Chargers is surprising, though.
That is surprising. 6 for the Chargers is surprising. Cowboys, Chiefs, Rams, and Saints had 5.
Okay.
I'm a little surprised about the Chiefs, especially after Alex Smith leaving.
Yeah. Well, I know that that is
I can look at them really quick. I can pull up the team in a minute here. Kansas City Chiefs. So their 5 players Travis Kelce, Eric Berry. Oh, we should have got that one. Kareem Hunt, Justin Houston, and Tyreek Hill. So,
I mean, those are legitimate top 100 contenders.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
So going back to their top 100, and let's go with the overrated. I don't know how many you picked are overrated, but the first one, Aaron Donald, at number 3. This is just embarrassing. If you're going to go with comparing the greatest at each position, then sure, he's the greatest defensive tackle. But how do you compare 100 at one position to 100 at another? Without looking at absolute value, you can't. Therefore, you have a 22-way tie for number 1. So if they went that way, then sure, Aaron Donald is the best defensive tackle. But they didn't go that way, nor did they even go by value. So they just made some kind of amorphous statistic. So the fact that Aaron Donald's at 3 is embarrassing. Jalen Ramsey at 9 is really bad. Joey Bosa at 14 for the Chargers.
I saw that one. Bad. Yeah, that's out of line, folks. It's out of line.
That is. And then ironically, actually, Travis Kelce, I just listed the tight end for the Chiefs. He's at 22. That's not as heretical as Aaron Donald and Ramsey, but
it's still like at least 20 too high though.
Yeah, I mean he's not even the best tight end.
I don't think I would put him in the top 50.
No, I agree. I mean, you think about how many. I mean, you just got to go quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. You easily have
and you're already
defensive ends,
pretty much
linebackers,
at like 40 at that point.
Yeah, so I think at best he could be 40. But yeah, 22. So those are some of the ones I had overrated. Before I go to underrated, did you have any other ones that you saw that just shut out to you? I mean, of course, Doug Baldwin, right? 68. I mean, what the heck?
So that's probably one of the least egregious ones to me because 68.
I'm sorry, underrated. Oh. He should be top 10. I'm sorry, I had it backwards.
Oh, right. Of course he should be top 10. I mean, so there were. It's hard because you look at a list of 100 people and you think I would just shuffle this totally differently. So I guess part of the problem I've had, and this is a debate you and I have had for a long time, is how do you rank players of different positions relative to each other, and having a list of how do you compare a star corner to a star quarterback, and do they could they both belong on the top 10 just because the corner is the most dominant at his position versus the quarterback being the best performer at his position? So that's where this just becomes, to me, this list without a true metric just becomes nonsense. But they did kind of happen to stumble on, I think, a handful of players that actually did deserve to be in the top 10.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just because of, we naturally go for the best quarterbacks anyway. So no matter what metric you come up with, even if it's good, bad, subjective, objective, you're going to have the top 1 or 2 quarterbacks always in your top 10.
Right.
Yeah, and they were less egregious. I'm sorry, they were more egregious on the underrated section. I had a bunch of players there, so I'll list some of those off. Ben Roethlisberger at 18. That
way too low.
Russell Wilson at 19. That's even worse.
Yep.
Matt Ryan at 21. It's pretty bad. AJ Green at 40. This next one. So I am not a fan of this next guy personally, but what in the world is Cam?
Is his mom listening? If any of the top 100 ESPN NFL players' moms are listening, please mute right now.
No, don't. I'm about to support him on the field.
Okay.
I may not like him personally.
Okay.
But
here we go.
Yeah. Cam Newton is 63.
Yikes.
What? Are you kidding me? Cam Newton is easily top 30, probably top 25.
Yeah.
How do you? Yeah. That's embarrassing. So Cam Newton is really bad at 63. He should be way higher. I know we joked about Doug Baldwin. Okay, Kirk Cousins at 80. That doesn't even. What? If Kirk Cousins was at 80, do you think they would have really reported his massive contract, or the Vikings would have paid him that much money? I mean, he hasn't been worse than top 50 the last couple years. How did he go to 80? Yeah.
Kids, don't try to make a top 100 players list at home. Okay, it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Not without guidelines.
Seriously. And we already mentioned Derek Carr is not there, but guess who else is not in the top 100? That is relatively as egregious as Carr.
Is it a quarterback?
It is a quarterback. And it should definitely be someone you know, because you thought something special of them earlier last week when we talked about him.
Ooh, now you're testing my short-term memory. That's never a good thing. I honestly don't remember. Who was it?
Jared Goff.
Oh, okay.
He is not in the top 100.
Yeah, see, that I wonder if that just... I hear that, and I look at this list, and I think that the guys that they picked were like... It's some weird combination of they're flashy players and some performance statistics combined with that, like overhype versus underhype. I mean, but even then, it doesn't really make sense. But like, that's not, that officially doesn't make any sense. So, whatever. I mean,
I know. Yeah. So, with that said, I'll give my top 10.
Okay.
So I'll start at number 10. Well, before I say that, I agree with you that without a very highly scientific and detailed approach to this in a metric, it is hard to judge. But you can still have two competing subjective metrics and one still being better than the other.
Right.
Like that. Yeah. So this is going off of, I guess, my intuition on value and impact, because I want to look at absolute value here, and influence on a game, and impact players. So with that pseudo objective metric, here's my top 10. Number 10, Von Miller, which was number 5 for them. Number 9, Julio Jones. Number 8, Antonio Brown. 7, Todd Gurley. 6, Matt Ryan. 5, Russell Wilson. 4, Le'Veon Bell. 3, Brady. 2, Breeze. And 1, obviously, Rodgers.
Interesting. Okay. So I only differed with you on 2 of these. And I did not rank, you meticulously ranked them in order from 1 to 10. I actually didn't do that. I just put my top 10 in no particular order. So I had Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan. So the 4 quarterbacks I put on there. Then I had 2 wide receivers, Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. Then I had 3 defensive players, Von Miller, J.J. Watt, and Aaron Donald. And 1 running back, Le'Veon Bell.
Okay, so I forgot to put this in my notes. So I have J.J. Watt at like 11 or 12.
Okay.
Yeah, he was an honorable mention.
I just felt really bad not having any defensive players in the top 10. It seemed odd to me. And that's where this goes back to the metric of, are we talking about, sort of like the NFL equivalent of WAR, wins against replacement? What if the guy wasn't playing, how much worse would the team be? Versus,
it's like
versus individual dominance in terms of their personal statistics comparative to other players at that position.
Well, yeah, it's like comparing a shortstop and a first baseman. Like the first baseman in this case would be the defensive players. They get almost a penalty. I mean, it's not a perfect analogy, but they get less of a value for their position, whereas like the shortstop or center fielder get a bigger boost to their to their defensive WAR in baseball. So that would be analogous to the quarterback, where he's just has more inherent value. And anyone who argues otherwise, in my opinion, doesn't have a clue about football. I mean, it's one thing to say how we compare players. Absolutely. Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley are very valuable. But just on principle, it is indefensible to say that any position outside of quarterback is more inherently valuable than the quarterback position. That would just be absurd.
Right. I agree with that. I just think that the whatever metric you have should evaluate partially on dominance with respect to that position and not just with respect to the outcome of a game.
I personally disagree with that, but I don't think that that method is bad. I just don't know how you would capture that. Like, I don't know how you would.
Well, the reason,
capture
the
those
argument
things.
for that metric is that each team has to have members of every single position, and so you need to be able to have valuable players at each position to succeed. Now, obviously, some teams succeed with having a really good QB and not a great rest of their team, but they usually have some decent players in certain positions that hold up the performance, the overall team performance. So anyway, it's a debate we could go on for forever, but I think there's validity, I think, to the idea that you want to look at relative performance within a position, but I do understand that ultimately on a football team, it's, as they say, it's about winning football games. So the players that win you the most football games are on an absolute scale more valuable than the players that win you less football games.
Well, regardless of what we agree or disagree on relative to that, we can certainly agree that ESPN did neither of those things for this list.
Right. This was a tire fire all around for them. I don't know. I mean, did the guys that wrote this even put their name on it?
No, they're just in the they're just in the
hiding in
nebulous
the ether.
of ESPN experts. Yeah.
In the football commentary ether.
Yeah.
All right. So we're running a little bit short on time tonight, so we're going to go ahead and skip the
late.
Well, we're running short on time remaining. So
time remaining.
So we're going to go ahead and skip the players over 30 article that we read that we thought was pretty interesting. We'll go ahead and talk about that next week. We'll have plenty of good stuff for next week. So we're going to move right into our game predictions for the week. So we're looking ahead to week 2. Before we get there, though, we're going to just review, to keep ourselves accountable, of course, review our own personal records. So last week we gave you guys predictions for who we thought would win the week 1 games. There were 16 games last week. This week, including the ongoing game with the Rams and the Raiders. So my current record is 7-7-1 pending the Rams-Raiders game, and Joseph beat me out by 1 game. His pending record is 8-6-1. We both picked the Rams to win tonight. So at most, I can exit this week with 8 wins, and Joseph can with 9. So that's a poor performance for us. Usually we end up around 10, sometimes 11. But again, this is week 1. So a lot of weird stuff happens. So this is pretty normal for us to be about 500 for the first week. So, all right. So let's move into our game-by-game predictions. So starting with Ravens at Bengals. I picked Bengals to win this one.
Same here. They had the kind of a somewhat surprising win against the Colts. The Chargers. Was able to put up, 38 points against them? I'm sorry, it was the Colts. Sorry, I mixed that up. They beat the Colts 34-23.
Yeah.
So that was a little surprising. So I think it's safe to go with them at home. Though the Ravens, my goodness, did they whoop the Bills.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I think that says more about how bad the Bills are going to be than how good the Ravens are. And Baltimore's also a tough place to play at home. But yeah, that was pretty amazing. And yeah, the Bengals, it's really only sheerly because of their performance this week that I was willing to give them a win on this one. Okay, Panthers at Falcons. This was a tough one, but I went with Falcons.
I did too. They were on the road last week. Panthers were at home. Not much happened. Well, not much really happened in the Cowboys-Panthers game anyways. And we saw that Matt Ryan was really rusty in week 1. So I suspect that they'll come out playing better, and they're at home. It'll be close. I think it'll be within 7 points, but Falcons still have a slight advantage.
Yep, agreed. Chargers at Bills. I'm going with Chargers.
Same here.
Browns at Saints. I'm giving it to Drew Brees. He's going to pull it off this week.
Yeah, I mean the Browns. One thing I didn't mention during our first segment recap was the Browns looked like they had some fire in them.
Oh, they did.
They played, and so it's a bummer that they lost Michael Kendricks because that would have been just another talented piece on the defense. But they had fire on both sides of the field, and Tyrod Taylor was really inefficient, 15 of 40, but he did have sparks, and plus, I mean, that game was sloppy on both sides anyway, so I'm sure the weather didn't help. But they throw in another wide receiver here, another offensive lineman here to give better protection, another safety here. Man, I think you're right. I think they are the Buccaneers of 2016.
I hope so, because they're my sleeper team this year. So
yeah. Now hopefully they don't do what the Buccaneers did. The next year we predicted them to do well, but I agree. I'm starting to see the sleeper talk, and so good call on that.
Yeah, although if they did, nobody would be surprised because, of course, the Browns let us down one more time. Vikings at Packers. This another tough one, but I'm giving the edge to the Packers here. Really, just because they're at home.
Well, depending on if Aaron Rodgers plays or not, there's still a little bit of suspicion there. I don't know if.
Yeah, fair. If he doesn't play, I'm giving this to the Vikings. I think that's a fair thing to call out injury. We'll release an official statement next week about what our pick was. How about that to stay accountable? So Vikings at Packers. I'm picking Packers. Who are you going with?
I'm going with the Packers.
Okay.
And for the very reason if Aaron Rodgers plays.
Okay. All right. Texans at Titans. This is also a weird one, but I'm going with the Texans.
Same.
One. Okay.
Now, would you have changed your pick if Marcus Mariota was playing? I mean, I still don't know either. I think he's in the same.
Not necessarily. It would go from, to me, it would go from basically a 50-50 with him playing. Without him playing, it's like a 60-40 to me.
All right.
So, okay. Colts at Redskins, going Redskins.
Yeah, man. Aaron Rodgers broke 250 passing yards this week, so get that man into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, you mean Alex Smith?
Who did I say?
Yeah, you said Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, sorry, Alex Smith.
Who also broke 250 passing yards, so what do you know?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when I think of Alex Smith now, I'm just thinking of how great he could be compared to Aaron Rodgers, so get that man into the Hall of Fame for his performance this last week. I'm going Redskins.
Like you said, your metric of if we say Aaron Rodgers is 100, what is Alex Smith? What's his number? That's your homework for the week, viewers. If Aaron Rodgers is 100, where do you put Alex Smith? All right, Chiefs at Steelers. I'm going Steelers.
Yeah, I think it's easy.
Dolphins at Jets. After tonight, I'm less sure. I'm going with the Dolphins, but This is a nervous one for me. I'm definitely not using this one for my eliminator.
Which we barely won, by the way.
I know, right? We picked just for background for our viewers. So the ESPN does an eliminator challenge where each week you pick one team to win, and if you ever get one wrong, you lose for the season. So both Joseph and I picked the Packers to win, and they had this epic, amazing comeback and won 24-23 over the Bears. So we just barely scraped by week 1. How pathetic would that have been if we lost week 1? So I'm trying to get past week 4, which I think is my best week of all time. So
really?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe week 5, but I've been really poor with the Eliminator Challenge. All right, next game, Eagles at Bucks. I'm going Eagles.
Yeah.
Lions at Niners. I'm going Niners.
You guys better win, because I'm picking you too, and they're my sleeper. So
you're darn right we better win. Cardinals at Rams. Going Rams.
Same.
Raiders at Broncos. After seeing the Raiders tonight, I'm more hesitant on this. I picked Broncos for this.
Yeah, I mean, when they're at home again and they beat, I think, a better team in Seattle, at least potential-wise, and with it being week 2, for these picks, then it's the best pick, I think. It's like a 55-45.
Yeah,
confidence.
agreed. Patriots at Jags. I'm picking Patriots.
Yep.
Giants at Cowboys. I'm going Cowboys.
Same. I mean, when the Giants are one of the most irrelevant teams in the league right now.
When they just, wake me up when September ends with those guys. I don't know what's going on. Seahawks at Bears. I'm going Bears. They're my NFC sleeper. I got to go with them on this one.
I only would have picked the home team for these specific teams.
Okay.
So if it was the other way around, I would have picked the Seahawks.
Okay, so that means you and I are in 100% agreement this week.
Wait, really?
Yes.
There wasn't.
I put
sure?
check marks next to every single one. We're in 100% agreement on this week.
Wow,
so...
and for our people listening,
did you say Texans over Titans?
I did.
Okay, then yeah, we're in 100% agreement this week. So just for our viewers' history, a little background history, that almost never happens. There's almost always at least one game where we're different. So mark this on your calendar's history, September 10th, 2018.
Yeah, and we did not talk about this beforehand. This happened just live, our predictions. We didn't talk about it, discuss the games or anything. So that's kind of crazy, 100%.
Okay, game to watch this upcoming week. My game, Vikings at Packers.
I knew it. It has to be.
It either had to be that or Panthers at Falcons, right?
Ooh, well, my backup was Patriots Jags.
Okay, that was we had talked before the show. I said 4 games. That was one of my other ones, and then I think I had Chiefs at Steelers was my 4th.
Okay, I didn't even have a 4th.
But yeah,
I think
Vikings at Packers I think is a pretty clear number 1 this week.
Yeah,
exciting matchup. I think this is the true test of this. Actually, could end up being the division winner determination. If we look back on the season and there's a 1-game differential, if the Vikings pull this off, that severely hurts the Packers' chance. So we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, taking the first game of the series on the road against the Packers and this early, yeah, definitely.
Yep. All right, so we're even in agreement there. Wow, that's never going to happen again. So we're going to release you guys to go watch the epic Rams-Raiders game. The Rams have pulled ahead. They're up 23-13 with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, so you guys have plenty of time to watch that game wrap up. So thank you so much for joining us this week. Thanks for dealing with our audio struggles at the beginning of the show. I'll probably end up cutting that out at the beginning because nobody needs to hear us doing audio tests. That's not a good use of anybody's time. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you liked the show tonight. Follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad, or you can follow me at Neuralizer_, the symbol underscore, not the word underscore, at Neuralizer_ on Twitter. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace out.